Hello friends, welcome to the point. So in this session, let's discuss about the most awaited topic called India-Pakistan relations. So let's have a brief introduction first. So the relation between the two countries, it have been complex and it is very largely hostile due to a number of historical and political events. Relations between these two states, they have been defined by the violent partition of British India in the year 1947, which started the Kashmir conflict and the numerous military conflicts fought between the two nations, and consequently their relationship has been plagued by hostility and suspicion. Northern India and Pakistan somewhat overlap in certain demographics and a lingua francas. Shared a lingua francas mainly in Punjab, Sindhi, and Hindustani. So, after the dissolution of the British Raj in the year 1947, two new sovereign nations were formed. They were the Dominion of India and the Dominion of Pakistan. The subsequent partition of the former British India displaced up to 12.5 million people, with estimates of a loss of life varying from several hundred thousands to 1 million. And India emerged as a secular nation with a Hindu majority population and a large Muslim minority, while Pakistan with a Muslim majority population and a large Hindu minority. Later, it became an Islamic republic. Although its constitution guaranteed freedom of religion to people of all faiths, it later lost most of its Hindu minority due to migration and the separate of East Pakistan in Bangladesh Liberation War. Soon after gaining their independence, India and Pakistan established diplomatic relations. But the violent partition and reciprocal territorial claims quickly overshadowed their relationship. Since their independence, these two countries they have fought three major wars as well as one undeclared war, and they have been involved in numerous armed skirmishes and military standoffs. So, the Kashmir conflict is the main center point of all these conflicts, with the exception of the Indo Pakistan War of 1971 and the Bangladesh Liberation War, which resulted in the secession of East Pakistan, which is now called as, which is the present Bangladesh. So there have been numerous attempts to improve the relationship, notably towards the Simla summit, the Agra summit, and the Lahore summit. And since the early 1980s, the relations between the two nations they have grown increasingly sore, particularly after that Siachen conflict, the intensification of the Kashmir insurgency in 1989, Indian and the Pakistani nuclear test in 1998, and the 1999 Kargil War. And certain confidence building measures such as 2003 ceasefire agreement and the Delhi Lahore bus service, it have been successfully in de-escalating tensions, but still those efforts have been impeded by periodic terrorist attacks. So the year 2001, the Indian Parliament attack, it brought the two nations to the brink of a nuclear war. And in the year 2007, Samjhata Express bombings, which killed around 68 civilians and most of whom were Pakistani, was also a crucial turning point in relations. Additionally, in the year 2008, Mumbai attacks carried out by Pakistani militants resulted in a severe blow to the ongoing India-Pakistan peace talks. After a brief thaw following the election of a new governments in both nations, bilateral discussions again stalled after the 2016 Pathankot attack. So, in September 2016, a terrorist attack on an Indian military base in Indian administered Kashmir, it killed 19 army soldiers, the deadliest such attack in years. So, India's claim that the attack has been orchestrated by a Pakistan supported jihadist group, and it was denied by Pakistan. So, which claimed the attack has been a local reaction to unrest in the region due to excessive force by Indian security personnel. So, the attack it sparked a military confrontation across the line of control with an escalation in ceasefire violations and further militant attacks on Indian security forces. And since 2016, the ongoing confrontation, continued terrorist attack, and an increase in nationalist rhetoric on both sides has resulted in the collapse of bilateral relations with little expectations that they will recover. And notably, following the 2019 Pulwama attack, the Indian government revoked Pakistan's most favored nation trust status, which it granted to Pakistan in the year 1996. And India also increased the custom duty to 200%, which affected the trade of Pakistani apparel and cement. So, since the election of new governments in both India and Pakistan in the early 2010s, some attempts have been made to improve relations. In particular, the development of a consensus agreement of a non-discriminatory market access on reciprocal basis status for each other, which will liberalize trade. So both India and Pakistan are members of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, which is called as SARC, and South Asian Free Trade Area. And Pakistan used to host a pavilion at the annual India International Trade Fair, which drew huge crowds. Deteriorating relations between the two nations resulted in a boycott of Pakistani traders at the trade fair. So, in November 2015, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif they agreed to resumption of bilateral talks. So the following month, Modi made a brief unscheduled visit to Pakistan while en route to India, becoming the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Pakistan since 2004. So despite those efforts, relations between the countries it have remained frigid, following repeated acts of the cross-border terrorism. And according to 2017 BBC World Service poll, only 5% of Indians view Pakistan's influence positively, with 85% expressing a negative view, while 11% of Pakistan's view India's influence positively, and 62% express a negative view. So, in August 2019, following the approval of Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill in the Indian Parliament, which revoked the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, it further brought a tension between these two countries, and with Pakistan downgrading their diplomatic ties, closing its airspace, and suspending bilateral trade with India. So, what were the seeds or what were the reasons of conflict during independence between India and Pakistan? So, we can say that about 500,000 Muslims and Hindus were killed in the communal riots following the partition of British India, and millions of Muslims living in India and Hindus and Sikhs living in Pakistan emigrated in one of the most colossal transfers of population in the modern era. So both the countries accused each other of not providing adequate security to the minorities emigrating through their territory. So this served to increase tensions between the newly born countries. So according to the British plan for partition of British India, all the 680 princely states were allowed to decide which of the two countries to join, with the exception of a few. But most of the Muslim majority princely states acceded to Pakistan, while most of the Hindu majority princely states joined India. And however, the decisions of some of the princely states, it would shape the Pakistan-India relationship considerably in the years to come. So, and the main issue between India and Pakistan at that time was the Junagadh issue and the Kashmiri conflict. So, now let's discuss about these two conflicts. So, talking about this Junagadh issue, Junagadh, it was a state on the southwestern end of Gujarat region. So, with the principalities of Manavadar, Mangrol, and Babribad. So, it was not contiguous to Pakistan, and other states physically separated it from Pakistan. So, the state had an overwhelming Hindu population which constituted uh, more than 80% of its citizen, while its ruler was Nawab Mahabat Khan, and he was a Muslim. Mahabat Khan, he wanted to join Pakistan on 15th August 1947, and Pakistan confirmed his acceptance of the accession on 15th September 1947. But India did not accept the accession as legitimate, since majority of the population in Junagadh were Hindus. So the Indian point of view was that Junagadh was not contiguous to Pakistan, and that the Hindu majority of Junagadh wanted it to be a part of India, and that the state was surrounded by Indian territory on three sides. So the Pakistani point of view was that since Junagadh had a ruler and a governing body who chose to join Pakistan, it should be allowed to do so. And also because Junagadh had a coastline, it could have maintained maritime links with Pakistan even as an enclave with India. So neither of the states was able to resolve this issue amicably, and it only added fuel to already charged environment. Then the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, the India's home minister, he felt that if Junagadh was permitted to go to Pakistan, it would create communal unrest across the Gujarat, and the government of India gave Pakistan time to void the accession and hold to plebiscite in Junagadh to preempt any violence in Gujarat. And Samaldas Gandhi formed the government in exile. And Patel ordered the annexation of Junagadh's three principalities. India cut off supplies of fuel and coal to Junagadh, and several air and postal links, sent troops to the frontier and occupied the principalities of Mangrol and Babriawad that had acceded to India. So on October 26th, Nawab of Junagadh and his family fled to Pakistan following clashes with Indian troops. On 7th November, Junagadh's court, facing collapse, invited the government of India take over the state's administration. The Devan of Junagadh, Sir Shah Nawaz Bhutto, the father of the more famous Julfikar Ali Bhutto, decided to invite the government of India to intervene and wrote a letter to Mr. Butch, the regional commissioner of Saurashtra in the government of India, to this effect. So the government of Pakistan protested regarding this, and the government of India rejected the protest of Pakistan, and it accepted the invitation of the Diwan to intervene. And Indian troops occupied Junagadh on 9th November 1947, and in February 1948 a plebiscite held almost unanimously voted for accession to India. So next discuss about the Kashmiri conflict. So talking about this Kashmir conflict, so Kashmir, it was a Muslim majority princely state, and it was ruled by the Hindu king called Maharaja Hari Singh. So at the time of the partition of India, Maharaja Hari Singh, the ruler of the state, he preferred to remain independent and he did not want to join either India nor Pakistan. And he wanted both India and Pakistan to recognize his princely state as an independent neutral country. So, despite the standstill agreement with Pakistan, teams of Pakistani forces were dispatched into Kashmir and backed up by Pakistani paramilitary forces, Pashtun Mahsud tribals invaded Kashmir in October 1947 under the code name called Operation Gulmarg to seize the Kashmir. So they reached and captured Baramulla on October 25th. And instead of moving on to Srinagar, just 50 km away and capturing its undefended airfield, they stayed there for several days. And Kashmir's security forces turned out to be too weak and ill equipped to fight against Pakistan. So, fearing that this invasion would bring about the accession to Pakistan, the Maharaja now turned to India and requested India for troops to safeguard Kashmir. Indian Prime Minister Nehru, he was ready to send the troops, but the acting Governor General of India, Lord Mountbatten of Burma, he advised the Maharaja to accede to India before India could send its troops. Hence, considering the emergent situation, he signed the instrument of accession to the Union of India on October 26, 1947. So, according to Pakistan General Muhammad Akbar Khan, the raiders delayed in Baramulla for 2 days for some unknown reasons. So, while invading, Pakistanis spread across the state and looted Baramulla town just 50 kilometers from the state capital, Srinagar, for several days starting October 25th, 1947, and the Maharaja signed the instrument of accession to the dominion of India on October 26, 1947, and Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah had already reached Delhi a day earlier on 25th October to persuade Nehru to send troops, and he made no secret of the danger the state faced and asked Nehru to lose no time in accepting the accession and ensuring the speedy dispatch of Indian troops to the state. And then the instrument, it was accepted by the Governor General of India on the next day, that is on October 27th, 1947. With this signing by Maharaja and acceptance by the Governor General, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir became part of India as per the Indian Independence Act 1947, passed by the British Parliament. And by this time, the raiders were close to capital Srinagar, and the Indian troops were airlifted from Delhi, landed at the Srinagar airport in Kashmir, and secured the airport before proceeding to evict the invaders from the Kashmir Valley. So the Indian troops managed to evict the aggressors from parts of Kashmir, but the onset of winter made much of the state impassable. So after weeks of intense fighting between Pakistan and India, Pakistani leaders and the Indian Prime Minister Nehru declared a ceasefire and sought the UN arbitration with the promise of a plebiscite. So in 1957, northwestern Kashmir was fully integrated into Pakistan, becoming Azad Kashmir or Pakistan administrated Kashmir, so which we call as a Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So in the year 1962, China occupied Aksai Chin, the northeastern region bordering the Ladakh. And in 1984, India launched Operation Meghdoot and captured more than 80% of Siachen Glacier. So Pakistan now maintains Kashmiri's right to self-determination through a plebiscite and promised plebiscite should be allowed to decide the fate of Kashmiri people. And India, on the other hand, it asserts that with the Maharaja signing the instrument of accession, as Kashmir has become an integral part of India. And due to all such political differences, the territorial claim has been the subject of wars between these two countries since from 1947 and 1965, and a limited conflict in the year 1999, and the state remains divided between the two countries by the line of control which demarcates the ceasefire line agreed upon the 1947 conflict, modified in 1972 as per the Simla Agreement. So this is a brief description about the India and Pakistan relations and how the conflict emerged between India and Pakistan, and that conflict started during the independence of both the countries, and the two main issues were Junagadh issue and Kashmir conflict. So in the next session, let's discuss about the wars, conflicts and disputes between India and Pakistan. Thank you.